It led to the suspension of fraternity activities, to a full investigation, and it spurred national outcry about rape on college campuses. But today, the Rolling Stone account of one UVA student's gang rape is being thrown into question. The magazine's decision not to report the stories of those accused of rape led to criticisms of the article's journalistic integrity. And hours ago, Rolling Stone issued a statement apologizing to its readers. In the face of new information, the statement read, there now appear to be discrepancies in the account, and we have come to the conclusion that our trust in the alleged victim was misplaced. We are taking this seriously and apologize to anyone who was affected by the story. The statement came shortly before the Washington Post published an article casting even more doubt on the integrity of the piece and the alleged victim's account. In the Post piece, friends and fraternity officials dispute some of the basic facts of her story. Back with me now is Bill Keller, and joining us is contributor for the Daily Beast, Ana Marie Cox. Bill, journalistically speaking, I mean, would the way this story was put together have passed muster in your newsroom?
I would say no, but I have to acknowledge right up front that I was editor back in 2006 during the Duke lacrosse team, when 3 members of the Duke lacrosse team were falsely accused of rape. And I have to say most newspapers, including ours, did not distinguish themselves in that. We did, I think, more aggressive reporting than the Rolling Stone seems to have done in this case. But I feel at least some twinge of sympathy for Rolling Stone. That said, the idea that the purported victim or actual victim, we don't know, was allowed to sort of limit the scope of the reporting seems to me to be an egregious breach. Yeah,
and Ana Marie, Bill's referring to the fact that the victim, apparently, the alleged victim, said she did not want the Rolling Stone reporters to reach out to the accused to get their thoughts. And, you know, you're a reporter. This is a news story. It's also a story about sexual violence in this country and underreporting, which this would seem to exacerbate. But just starting with the journalistic piece, I mean, is there ever a time not to talk to the accused?
I don't think so. I actually don't think that's even something in the guidelines that are seek. There are actually guidelines for reporters who want to report on instances like these, on trauma cases, and that's not in there. You don't limit your reporting because of what a survivor might tell you. You treat a survivor, you show a survivor a lot of respect, but that doesn't mean you don't report, and that is a problem here. And I just want to say, we're going to get to this, I know, but this idea that that because this story has not panned out, it will affect the way people feel about, or the way people view future allegations at university, or how they feel about underreporting of sexual assault in general, is really tragic. And I want to point out that the reporting in this story could have stood on its own without Jackie's story. There would have been a story about the lack of response at universities if it had, without that story being included. That story was included because it's sensational, because it's gruesome. And the thing is, I think that you and I both know, most sexual assaults are not that sensational. They happen every day. And the reason they don't get reported is because they're not sensational. People think they don't live up to the idea of what a rape should look like. And I think that's a tragedy, too.
Yeah, what is also ironic in the statement from Rolling Stone, the onus seems to be on, I mean, if this story is fabricated, then of course the alleged victim should bear some burden of that. But the Rolling Stone never sort of says, we made a mistake. Most of the blame is cast on the alleged victim and saying we misplaced our trust. She has, you know, sort of breached what is a tacit agreement, perhaps.
Right. I mean, I've often discovered that companies that are supposedly in the communications business aren't very good at communicating when it comes to themselves, but that was clearly a blunder to sort of throw the source under the bus and kind of shift the blame to her. I mean, in a case like this, you come right out up front, you assign reporters to report how your bad story got written in the first place, and you let it all hang out. But the last thing you do is blame a bad source.
Let me ask you, to Ana Marie's point, Bill, you know, what this does for the national conversation. Again, you guys at Marshall have been talking about the underreporting of rape.
Sure.
We are at a moment where there seems to be a real momentum, a moment where there's momentum. Imagine that. But there's a real conversation about sexual assault, about victims, about how much of the burden of proof is rested on their shoulders and their shoulders alone. How much does this set that conversation back?
Well, I mean, the real worry, as Ana Marie noted, is that it would somehow contribute to the myth that there's massive over-reporting, false reporting of rape. Dana Goldstein, who writes about the social science of criminal justice for the Marshall Project, I was talking to before I came over, and she said that the absolutely most credible study of this that has been done estimates that between 2% and 10% of rape allegations are false, and even some of those are, borderline. So the idea that women make this stuff up is a pernicious myth.
And pernicious is the right word, right, Ana Marie? I mean, we talk about the notion of fraud or is incredibly insidious on every level of our national discourse, whether we're talking about, the IRS or we're talking about rapes. This idea that one person said something that wasn't true, therefore the whole sort of system, the whole dialogue around it is a false one.
Well, what I want to say is that anyone who thinks that women are out there reporting, doing false reports of rape needs to ask the woman closest to them in their lives about this. Ask a woman that you know if she would do that, or if she thinks that other women would do that, and you will get the answer no. This is, I mean, it's appalling to me. Some men in my life who I care about a lot, who I trust, who I think of as feminists, I was talking to about this story, about the Cosby story, and their first reaction is always like, well, they might, and it's stunning to me. It is stunning to me that anyone would think that is like the first instinct that woman has, that any woman would go forward and do this to get attention or to get money. To talk about one's sexual assault is still such a deeply shaming thing. It's still such a place of such vulnerability. What I really hope is that the attention around this story does not prevent other women from coming forward.
Yeah,
that's what I hope.
That is the huge worry, right? I mean, there were other victims in that story whose accounts presumably were true.
Right.
That this should not delegitimize those.
Well, and research shows that one category of men who are particularly inclined to believe that a lot of accusations about rape are false are police. We've recently published some research on that subject. So, the worst consequence of a journalistic blunder like this would be if it made women fall back and retreat from their willingness to report when something happens.
And to make law enforcement more skeptical of those who do report.
Exactly.
It is not a good story on many levels. Keller and Ana Marie Cox, thanks for joining me. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.